So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. And we're very excited to have Dr. Andrew Campbell with us today. He's a graduate of the University of Toronto and with a PhD in Educational Leadership Policy and Diversity. He is currently a faculty member in the Master of Teaching program at the University of Toronto and an assistant professor at Queen's University. Dr. Campbell is an Ontario certified teacher and has been an educator for over 25 years in places like Jamaica, Bahamas, and Canada. He's authored 2 books, Teachable Moments with Dr. ABC, A Spoonful for the Journey in 2015, and The Invisible Student in the Jamaican Costume in 2018. His research and scholarship focus on issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion, cultural competency, education leadership, 2S LGBTQ and issues, and teachers and teacher performance evaluation. Dr. Campbell continues to present at various peer-reviewed academic conferences across North America and the Caribbean. He's a workshop facilitator and a motivational speaker. He appreciates fashion, traveling, and meeting new people, and equally finds pleasure in bringing his community together to share a good meal. Janet and I, as co-chairs of Ergo, would like to welcome you, Andrew, to our group here and the educators that have joined us from across the province.
Pleasant good afternoon. Go ahead, Janet.
I was just going to say, well, thank you so much for coming and talking to us this afternoon about culturally responsive and relevant pedagogy.
Thank you so much, Janet. Thank you so much for having me. I noticed that nobody has their camera on, so I'm going to invite a number of us, at least the first 2 rows, to have your cameras on. It's very important that we humanize the space. I know when you go different spaces, have different rules. For my rule is, or for my conversation is, it would be great to have at least 2 rows of us on. What it helps to do is humanize the space, and it fills up the space. And as I have conversation with you, I may say Phyllis, I may say Elaine, I may say Atla. Is that pronunciation Atla? I love it. Never heard it before. I'm living for your name, Atla. I may say Colleen. I say Laura. Sola. Is that Sola? Sola?
Sula.
Sula. I am loving it. Two lessons in the first 1 minute. 2 lessons in name pronunciation. 2 lessons. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sula. Thank you so much, Atla. It's important that we get your name. And I don't want you to allow yourself or your students to practice and say, just call me S, because I keep messing up your name. Your name is not S. Your name is Sula. And it's my job. It's our job to get it right. I see some familiar faces. I think I see Phyllis over there. I see you, Phyllis. I had an amazing interaction with Phyllis over there doing amazing equity work. Good to see you, Phyllis. And I've seen some other familiar faces. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for joining this quick conversation. And we're going to have a conversation about culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. And more than anything else, we're going to have a conversation about the culturally responsive educator. So that is something that I'm very big on. I have added to the work. I'm very big on it because more and more as I do this kind of conversation, I realize that people forget that the pedagogy is a tool. I want you to remember that pedagogy is a tool, and the person behind the tool is my concern. And that's you and I, Christine. That's you and I, Janet. That's you and I, Valini. It's all of us who are responsible for executing. So the first thing I want to share is that I am not coming to you, listen to me carefully, and I'm glad this is for the recording. I am not coming to you with this great new idea that nobody knows, and it is so new, and we got the Dr. ABC with a PhD to come tell us. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I am coming to you as one teacher to a next we have been doing the work. But what we do as any form of professional is that every now and then we have to get to a place where we are sharpening our tools. And so if you ask me, what is this conversation about? It is about sharpening our tools and adding to the toolkit. This conversation is about sharpening our tools and adding to the toolkit. So I'm not here to speak to anybody in a tone or a way as if you are novice, because you are not. I want to center that none of you here are novice. So I'm very happy to be able to speak into persons who have tools in their boxes, who have been using pedagogies, but we are coming together to have a conversation and how can we sharpen those tools, strengthen those pedagogies so we can ensure that our classrooms are way more relevant and responsive when it comes to cultural, on the cultural continuum. So this conversation is not new. And I use that diagram on the cover for a particular reason, because I want you to realize that we have had languages before, and I'm sure you've heard the equity pedagogy and the cultural responsive teacher and the cultural responsive pedagogy and the sustaining pedagogy and constructivism, if you are from the early childhood posse, and multicultural education. That is what it is about. It really is about, and I'm going to share a quote with you that I used on February the 2nd of this year at the Durham Catholic District School Board. And I'm quoting myself, of course. And I said, culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy is about ensuring that we say to our students through our classroom climate and practices, I will ensure you, I am here to ensure you will be, belong, and become. That is what it is. It's not a stunt. It's not a trick. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to get right into it because you know what? We want to sharpen our tools. So culturally relevant responsive pedagogy. I want you to look at my first picture on my board. The first picture, I'm going to show you two pictures. The first one is on my board. And I want to call that person on the left, Janet. I'm going to call that person Janet. Janet, that's you. You are well prepared to teach. You are prepared as your boss, as your principal, as your colleague. I have absolutely no criticism for you. From what I can see, you have on your snow clothes, you have your teaching stick in your hand. We call it pointer, whatever we want to call it. I used to have a broken ruler that I use. You are well prepared. I want to show you that you, the teacher, is well prepared. And I want to show you that the student on the other side is also well prepared. But we have a disconnect, Janet. Janet, we have a disconnect because what you are seeing, Janet, because of your upbringing, your cultural reference, your background, your schema, what you have clearly prepared is an entire lesson on snowballs. But the student, because of his upbringing, his background, his schema, his lived experiences, he's seen snowball, he's seen coconuts. So we are not here to talk about the unprepared teacher. We're not here to talk about the ill-equipped teacher. We're here to talk about culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy, how we are opening ourselves to be better at what we do. And I was at a meeting the other day, Janet, I'm going to surprise you with this. I've been using this picture a million times. And I was at a meeting the other day, and I love when somebody, goes in the chat box and shares. So please, if you have a comment, go into the chat box. It's our chat box. It is our chat box. And I can tell you, Christine and Janet have been intentional in having this, as not as a webinar, but as a conversation. So feel free to use the chat box to make a comment, to say something. And I'm teaching Christine. And somebody said to me, because of their lived experience, because where they are from, what they're seeing is a lake and holes for ice fishing. Oh, Christine, I lived all my life that minute. Christine, I lived all my life that minute. Because one person is seeing snowball, one person is seeing coconut, one person is seeing holes in the lake for ice fishing. You got the picture. So when we are having our lessons, we're asking ourselves, are our students seeing what we are teaching? Or are we teaching based on our students' background and experiences and lived experiences? And I want to go quickly because I know I could hear somebody saying, well, and I'm going to come back to that point again to say, well, Dr. Campbell, I logged in from Waterloo, I logged in from Barrie, I logged in from Simcoe, I'm logged in from Kitchener, I logged in from Ottawa. And in my school, we are only 95% white, and my students are all white. Remember, somebody said that in your head. I'm just thinking somebody's saying that. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. So I want you to hold that imagination, hold that point, hold that get out of jail free card, thinking I don't need to do this because all my kids are from the same experience. I'm sure you know all your kids are not from the same experience. They may all be white, but they are not from all the same experience either. So even so, they are not from the same experience. And that's why some of our kids are suffering in our schools, because one size does not fit all, and we refuse to differentiate. I had a student teacher the other day who complained to me. She said, Dr. Campbell, I don't wish to complain, but she said, I am in a classroom and it really hurts me to see the number of students who are on IEP. That's not the issue. I said, IEP is IEP. She said, I know that's not the issue, but the number of time that we have engaged a class and everybody does the exact same thing day in, day out. The IEP was just written because it's something to be completed. So are you attending to your students, those amazing students? Because right now, Sula, I see a number of students who are going to fail this course. Candice, I see a number of students who are going to fail this course, Candice. Laura, I see a number of failures in front of me, because if we're given this test to climb the tree, I don't know how the fish in the bowl is going to make it. I don't know how the dolphin over there or manatee, whatever it is going to make it. I am absolutely sure, as big as bold as the elephant is, he must be trembling in his boots right now, because I have no idea how he's going to climb this tree. So many of our students have failed on arrival, Elaine. They have failed on arrival, Anne. Steve, they have failed on arrival, not because they don't know, because we have not provided for them. I'm going to share a story to you. I was at the York Catholic District School Board. They had an amazing program earlier this year. I was a part of it, UNESCO, something fabulous. And I heard two Asian girls, they were sisters, talk about their experiences. It broke my heart, but it reminded me to always grow and do better as a teacher. 26 September, I've at my 26 Septembers. So I'm not as young as I look. Good grace, good God, and I moisturize. Remember, we have to moisturize, okay? We have to moisturize, everybody. So I said to myself, I have to be better. And she said something that touched me, Steve. She said, they came off the plane and they came to the school. They came off the plane like 3 days, and they came to school like the third day they was in Canada. And they were in grade 1. And they said, all we wanted to do was to play with the other kids. They were 6. They said, all we wanted to do was to play. But because we didn't have Canadian English, and because we spoke no English, we were placed in another room, in another space. And she said, we did not get the kind of attention given to everybody else. I had a meeting yesterday about how we have treated ESL as if it's the you can do this, you go in ESL, you just judge, you put you in ESL, and after that, I know some ESL teachers are amazing, I know you're amazing, but what happens, Phyllis, is that there's a culture in many schools that if I put you in ESL, then I'm not going to really involve you in other things. You get where I'm going with this, Phyllis? So we don't go to the ESL kids to put them on the choir. We don't go to the ESL kids to ask them to be a part of the student council. We end up leaving them in ESL, and a lot of them feel disenfranchised. And so a next picture I have is this one. What culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy is also not. It's not a sprinkle. Anybody remember this picture? Famous picture on social media. I see Erin laughing. I remember Erin, the first time I saw this picture, I cracked up laughing. It was so extra. You know, we loved it. Oh, we were seasoned and sprinkling, and everybody wanted to sprinkle their meat like this. It was all over YouTube and Facebook. As educators, this is not how we do our seasoning. Absolutely not. Our seasoning is not a sprinkle. We go into the meat. We go into our bones. We go into the depths of what we do, and we ensure that it's not a sprinkle. Because what happened is that I'm sure many of you have come from that place where you remember the bin. I was a younger teacher in certain schools, and there was the Ramadan bin, because it was Ramadan like now. There was the Chinese New Year bin. There was the Black History Month bin. I've seen the Black History Month bin. There was the First Nations bin, always that bin with the lazy books in it, because we can't find any book about First Nations. Can we not find any books, or we haven't tried harder to find books? So it's not a sprinkle. So the idea that I am going to be culturally relevant and responsive because I have the box, it's not it. So what we want to do, I want to look at this amazing these questions. And what we're going to do, I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to speak to each other. So what happened for those who are listening to this video long afterwards, when we go into the breakout room, you'll notice we pause the video. And so we have in private conversations. But as we come back outside the breakout room, we again start the video and we capture everything. So if you're not missing anything really, you're missing some of those conversations. What we want to do is I want us to take a minute and I want us to take a picture of this slide, and I'm also going to copy and paste it in the box. But we're going to ask each other. We're going to take even 2 questions. Let's take 2 questions. We can take number 1. We can take number 2. We can take number 3. It's a very important one. Number 4, anyone you want to ask. Who is represented in your curriculum materials? How? That's a big one afterwards. How are they represented? Who is represented on the staff? Who is not? Who is represented in the pictures on the wall? Where are the people with diverse sexual orientation represented in the curriculum, classroom, and school? I spoke to, I was at a workshop the other day, and I spoke to a group of people about the same topic. And one professor, I loved when people are so open and honest. She raised her hand. She said, Dr. Campbell, you are so right. She said, I teach, it's a health professionals, PSW teachers, nurses, preceptors, medical lab, dental hygienists, dentists, and one of them who teach personal support workers, she raised her hand. She said, Dr. Campbell, I teach a course in bedside relationships and manners. And she said, you are right. She said, in my presentation, in my book, in my work that I do, she said, all of the pictures that I have, Dr. Campbell, every single one of them, she said to me, every single one, she said, is of a nuclear family. She said, as you were talking about who is represented and how they are represented, she said, my mind went right back to my work. And she said, you are right. She said, you are right. All the nuclear families. I put the questions in the chat, everyone. She said, it's a nuclear family. And so she said, one of her tasks she's going to do is look at the PowerPoint slides, look at the representation, look at who are in the pictures. You don't have to say much, but when you look in your classroom practices, another example, I tell you, I'm a storyteller. For those who don't know, I'm a storyteller. Another example I use is one when I talked to the OSLA one time, amazing group of people, school librarians. And I said to them, go back to your library and look on the wall, count how many pictures are on your library wall. And then count how many pictures are persons who are differently abled, or students who are girls doing empowering stuff, or Black people and what they are doing. And somebody came back to me and said, you were right, Dr. Campbell. I had over 40 pictures and one had a Black student and he was playing basketball. Nothing is wrong with basketball, Laura. Nothing is wrong with basketball, Colleen. But if that is your only narrative, if that is the assumption and the stereotype that you are riding on, we are not riding well. And so we're going to jump right into our chat about our breakout rooms. We're going to spend about 6-7 minutes, and the rooms are created. Let's answer 1 or 2 of those questions. Let's have conversation with each other. So the rooms are open, everybody. With about 6 minutes on the clock, let's have some conversation with each other. People are coming back. Wonderful. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. People are coming back. They're joining us. Some rooms, exciting conversations were happening in their room. And so everybody's coming back. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let me see if everybody's almost back. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I got some learning myself. And thank you, Laura, for sharing. I was in a couple of rooms. Laura, thank you for that sharing. Is that Jan? Is it Jan or what? How do you pronounce it?
Just Jane, plain Jane.
Jane. I think it was Jane, and I was like, wow, I learned 3 names today, different spelling. Never see a Jain before. Something new, and I am loving it. Thank you so much. I was in your room, Jane, an amazing conversation, and something you said really, really I want to underline. You said, I love when you said representation is one thing, but how the teacher brings that representation into the space is the next thing. Powerful. Because a lot of us can say all we want to say about representation, but if, I remember, a number of times I was asked by publishing companies to, just to look at books and see how things are represented. And because some of us, we have certain unconscious bias that we have not yet unpacked, we don't realize how we consistently or constantly use certain deficit lens and certain languages when we say certain things. And I remember I was a part of this one particular book review process, and they were talking about water, and it says like this particular place at a beautiful lake, and this particular place at a whatever, and then they reach to a community in a country in Africa, and the narrative begin by saying, this lake was different. It did not have this, and it did not have that. So it went to right to deficit. So this is the kind of language that we have to be careful of, because then students will walk away and say, well, I hear they have dirty water in Africa, and then you don't correct them. So we have to be so narrative is one thing, bringing in representation is another thing, but how we bring it in as a teacher, that is our responsibility. So thank you so much for engaging in those initial conversations. Our schools, I took this from the Toronto Catholic District School Board Equity Plan. I love this sentence. Our schools and classrooms must be places where students' lived experiences are valued and celebrated, where they see themselves in the curriculum, where they are authentically engaged, and where barriers to their success are identified and removed. This is a part of culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy, where their lived experiences are valued and celebrated. Let me give you a quick example of what I mean by a difference in culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. So let me give you a simple, quick example. I'm an LTO by choice. So I've been to schools and more schools, right? And never applied for a full-time contract. So I'm from school to school. And in one particular year, I was at a school, a middle school to be exact. And there was a bunch of kids, a whole bunch of hijab wearing girls in a school and classroom Muslim, and it was Ramadan and they were fasting. And I curiously asked to the students, I said, how many of you are aware your classmates are fasting? Sorry, your classmates are fasting. Few hands went up, Amy. And then I said to the teachers in the workshop, how many of you are aware that many of your students are fasting? Few hands went up. And I said, if you have 7 hijab wearing girls in your class and you're teaching gym today and they're on fasting, there should be maybe consideration for if we're going to run 7 times around the field today. You got that, Amy? Because I know my students, I know their culture, I know they're on fasting. I'm going to teach my class still, but today is not the day we're going to run 7 times around the field. So these are the kind of things we have to think about when we're doing. So that was at one school. Christine, I went about 60 minutes drive. Well, a little bit more. Let's get 26 minutes. Took me some time to another school for the same week to substitute. And I was substituting for the librarian at this particular school. And they know me well, so I normally eat my lunch in the library, listen to my YouTube videos, play my music, live my best life on my lunchtime because it's my lunchtime. And she said to me, hey, Mr. Campbell, you can't eat your lunch in the library today. And I said, why? She said, because our students are fasting, some of our students are fasting, and we are using the library as a space for them to come and sit if they wish to come and be quiet and just be away from the friends and the play and the food and as teachers. And I was like, what? I was so surprised and impressed. And I said, so who is on duty? She said, teachers, we volunteer. This is a school where the staff, teachers I'm talking about, were white. And I use color for a reason, and I use context. So the idea that Black History Month is for the Black kids only, that's foolishness. Black History Month is for all of us, so we can gain in cultural competence. Ramadan conversation, if you have one child in the class celebrating, it's a conversation to have on the carpet, so they respect what the child is doing and why he's doing that. I spoke to a group of teachers the other day, and they were very honest with me. They felt like the way for them to deal with difference was to hide things, so they kind of avoid certain conversations. One teacher said to me, my child said, Mom, that man over there is old. And she said, oh, no, I stopped him because we didn't want to have the conversation. I said, age is a beautiful conversation to have with your child. What is wrong with him saying the gentleman is old? And you turned to me and I said, yes, Johnny. And I'm going to be old one day like him, and grandpa is old like him, and great-grandfather is older than him. And you talk about age. Age is different from ageism, but because we're at a space where once we hear a courageous conversation, we get scared and we run away. We do not have good conversations. And so we have to remember that these are important conversations to be had with our class. So let's move on. So I love this idea. I'm pairing this back to a conversation I had, and this come from Professor Jim Ryan at the University of Toronto, OISE, who taught me years ago. In his book, he was talking about culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy at that time. And this was a quote from a teacher, and the teacher was being honest. The teacher was being honest. The teacher said, most of us don't have a background to give us a criteria to deal with this. This means that the increase in difference in their schools. You know, a teacher who started teaching in Ontario didn't have Chinese students, didn't have any Black kids, would have 1 or 2 Indian kids in their class, maybe, and that's about it. Most of us who were born in Canada, many of us in small towns, have no experience dealing with those issues. So we don't have the tools, and that is very hard to develop. The first thing is, it's not hard to develop. Mindset is important. We are here to learn, unlearn, adjust, grow, and develop as educators. We are here to sharpen our skills and strengthen our toolbox. So the idea that these skills are hard, it's a problem. It's one of the problems we have, and it's called teacher mindset. I have done tons of these workshops, and I could tell you I've been in spaces where teachers are ready to go. When you do breakout rooms, because my workshops are like 2 hours, and you see the kind of materials people create and work on next steps, you leave thinking, wow, do I get a job on this staff? And then I've been in other workshops where when the workshop is finished, Jane, just so you know, I asked the principal for a one-on-one, and I said, what's happening in your school? And the principal confessed to me, because I could see it in the work and the way they engage. So mindset is big. So we want to say we have the mindset. It's not hard. We can develop those skills, because in our schools, we have many kind of students in our schools, and the changing phase of Ontario is happening. You know, I've been workshops in places like Barrie, where schools never had certain racialized students, and now they do. So the place is changing. The place is changing. But here is the most important thing why you all need this. When I started teaching at University of Toronto, I remember people say, Dr. Campbell, you really are so passionate about your course in equity and how you go deep, and the entire class is white. And I've had people ask me about the effort and the energy I use in those classes. And I said to them, because these teachers will be teaching my nephew and my nieces, and they'll be teaching other people's children. So I want all of us to get to the place where we are grown in cultural competence. So whether you are teaching a Black child or not, or a racialized child or not, or your school is all white or not, you are an educator, you are a person of a global lens, and so this is important for you to get. There are students in our school system who are unable to see the game. There are students in our school system that are blocked because barriers and fences. And then there are students in our school system who we are trying to help with boxes. So as we do this as a staff, as school, as educators, how do we ensure that we serve all our students, especially those who are unable to see the game? And what we want to do is move from equality conversation, which we already passed, to the equity conversation, which we are at, to the liberation conversation, where we have moved the barriers. And culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy is one of those inclusionary practices that helps us to foster equity. Culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy is one of those liberatory pedagogies, inclusionary pedagogy, empowering pedagogy that allows us to move away the fences. So culturally responsive teaching, as we say, is an approach that empowers our students intellectually, socially, emotionally, and politically by using cultural reference to impart knowledge, skills, and attitude. And that is said by the great Gloria Layden-Billings. She's the guru for this. The big word for me there is empower. So these are the three main tenets. There are other persons who have written and they're talking about 6 other ideas and whatever. They come from these very three tenets. And the first one is the most important one. We're going to walk away today. If you forget anything I say, Jane, you will never forget that one of the first tenet of culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy is holding high expectations for all students. It's not about the box. It's not about the book. It's not about making sure we say we find 5 books with 5 black girls in it and a book with a rainbow on the flag and that kind of stuff. It is the first thing we want to do is how we hold high expectation for our students. I'm working with a school board that I think is amazing that they are looking at de-streaming. And the beauty of it is the de-streaming is not about grade 9. They're talking about de-streaming from kindergarten. They got it. That streaming didn't start in grade 9. And everybody's like, oh my God, grade 9. Streaming started in kindergarten. We have started to sort our students in many ways. And one of the ways we sort our students is our racialized students and black kids and indigenous children are given less than, shown less than, provided with less than, and they're overrepresented in certain programs and underrepresented in others. I have to share this other story when we talk about responsibility, because I know when I come to these workshops, people say, well, what if they're this? What if they're that? What if we go back to what one of your teachers said about how we bring these conversations in the classroom? I was in a school once, and I'm also an award-winning dance teacher. So every school I go to, and dance choreographer, every school I go to, since I came to Canada, I always have a dance club. I came from the Bahamas. For 8 years, I lived in the Bahamas. An award-winning dance teacher, national awards, travel and compete. Just like you say, dance mom, it's not a joke. It's real. It's that dramatic. And every school I go, I open a dance club. And one particular school I was at, I was ready to start the dance club, and the children from the art of hearing program, Amy, they kept hanging around the door. And before I could say anything, the students say to the art of hearing kids, you can't hear the music, so you can't be a part of dance club. School culture and climate, Amy. School culture and climate, Amy. That is a narrative in the school, Amy. You see, when I come, the one thing about me, when I come here, we come to have courageous conversations. If you don't wish to be a part of courageous conversation, you never attend a workshop with Dr. ABC, because unapologetically, we're going to have those conversations. So that a number of kids say to the children, you cannot be a part of dance class. I stopped them and I said, you don't speak for Mr. Campbell. I said, yes, you can. And they said, sir, but they cannot hear the music. I said, but guess what? Your teacher is qualified. I can teach music I could teach dance without the music. I could use counts. I invited the art of hearing kids to join the dance troupe. We taught the entire dance using counts. Then we play the music. So those who cannot hear the music well, everybody is on the same count because I taught the dance by count. That's my pedagogy. That's me breaking down the fence. That's my liberation. That's my inclusion. You have it also, Karina. You have it, Leanne. You have it, Anne. Where is yours? You have it. Use it. And then that same school, something happened. The second year I was there, an Indian girl came to the school and she was amazing. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And when she joined dance class and she moved, I was like, whoa. And so for the spring production, she was the lead dancer in Mr. Campbell's production, which happened to be very big because I like everything extra. And I heard a little rumbling at the school the next day. A couple of parents privileged parents, 2- and 3-car garage, 5-bedroom houses, the kind of school smack in the middle of a neighborhood like that, where the school is public, but it feels private. And they went to the school office because they were concerned that the new teacher, the black guy, that's me, Mr. Campbell, had given the leading part to this new girl, and she's Indian, and she doesn't go to ballet school like the others. These are the kind of things we have to disrupt in our schools. These are the kind of things we have to disrupt in our schools, where parents come with these things, and it's a part of it. Because what we are seeing here, let's get to number 2, everybody, assisting our students in the development of cultural competence. You got me, Amy? I think you got that. Because if our teachers and our students had gained enough cultural competence, they would not have a problem with a child who was wearing an hijab who wants to be a part of Mr. Campbell dance class because she cannot wear the short skirt. They would understand that Mr. Campbell's job is to make sure she be a part of the dance class, and she wear her long skirt covering her ankle, and she was in the same color, she was in the same fabulous fabric, and she was in a part of the production. And because she danced well, you wouldn't notice the length of the skirt because she was just as amazing. Because I broke down the wall. So when we talk about assisting our students in development of their cultural competence, just like Jane said, how do you bring in these conversations? How are you bringing this conversation inside the classroom? That is culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. How are you talking about the war? Let me tell you the next one, and then I'm going to move on. Guiding students to develop critical cultural consciousness. Grade 6 curriculum talks about refugee. For years, many of our classrooms, we have 2 pictures of refugees. It's a little black boy in Africa somewhere who is hungry and half naked, and flies are following him around, and we said that's a refugee. And the next picture is someone who maybe is a hijab wearing girl among ruined buildings in Syria or Afghanistan. That is a refugee. All of a sudden, there are blue eyes, white people in Ukraine who are refugees, and we're using the language refugees, and our students are confused. Cultural critical consciousness. Jane said it. I have to give Jane the credit again. How do you bring this conversation in? Years ago, if you were teaching and explain to people that refugees come in different forms and formats, and people who are rich and beautiful and powerful like you and I, we can become refugees because of our sexual orientation or because war comes to our doorsteps. But we weren't doing that. We were placing refugee in deficit. So when you think of culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy, there are a number of things I want you to consider. We consider classroom instruction. We consider the school climate. I talked about that already. Is your school really responsive? Is your school responsive? Is the leadership responsive? I heard somebody say they're doing some OPC training. I remember about 2 years ago, I was a guest speaker at the OPC for more than once. I was there. I loved working with them. I've written for the magazine. I think I'm supposed to be writing the next article soon. Love the work they're doing, OPC, love the work. And I love when people are honest. And a number of principals raised their hand and they said, Dr. Campbell, can I be honest? And I said, of course you're going to be honest because that's who you are. And one of them said, you know, in my school, I just don't celebrate Black History Month because I don't want to make a mistake. I wasn't rough with her, Christine. I thank her for her honesty. And then I pull her aside deep and I said, think about what you just said. I don't celebrate Black History Month at my school because I'm afraid to make a mistake. And I said to her, I'm going to give you something to think about as you relax at home this evening. How do you make a mistake in celebrating? You see where the deficit comes? She got it. Oh, she loved it. She wasn't offended. She said, Dr. Campbell, I get it. I said, how the first thing comes to your mind is an error, is a mistake, because what we have done has been placed in deficit for so long because of the climate. I can tell that principal has been celebrating Black History Month in such a beautiful way now because she understands what to do the celebration well. We don't start with a slave ship because that's not the story That's not the single story. That's not the only story. Nothing is wrong with talking about slavery. We should. Absolutely. Professor George, they remind us that a part of establishing Black education is also talking about the trauma. But we need to center the joy. We need to center the excellence. We need to center the other things. And so we talk about student voice and space and leadership and community connection, family, school relationship. Right now, I'm so excited to see certain boards I work with, how intentional they are in building relationship with the families. One particular board, I did so much workshop with them in equity, and they came to me one day and I was like, oh, I love this. I said, Dr. Campbell, all the learning that we are doing in the school, we want to make sure the parents are part of the learning. Can you do a parent series? And I said, you best believe. And the parents show up and we talk about all the equity topics. And they want to hear about LGBTQS because some of them have children who are LGBTQ and they want to know how the school is treating them. And we went into those conversations. Cultural relevant response pedagogy talks about your cultural professional development, which we're doing today. I learned something today. I learned 3 names and 3 new pronunciations. That's what I learned today. I learned from a room I was in. Let me show you my notes. I love to write my notes. You wouldn't believe how much notes I write, and I am the presenter, right? I was in a room and somebody talked about aboutness and witness, and my joy was so full when you mentioned that you know yourself. My joy was so full because I never call it those 2 words, but I know exactly because I teach this. Are we talking about those students? Are we talking with those students? So I am here to learn. Christine, what have you learned? Jane, what are you learning? Sharon, what are you learning? If we are here, Leanne and Lori, are the 2 Loris. I see you 2 Loris over there, right? I see you 2 persons in the room. I must call it the 2 Loris. That's me. That's me. I see you. You must be intentional. Both of you are sitting there together. You are intentional. I'm watching you. You are listening. But both of you are going to walk away with different learning. That's how it happens. And the last one I put in red for a reason. Not because I'm rough with my teachers. I tell you otherwise, if you was at the start, you'll realize the respect I walk in the room with, because I look around the room and I see the level of expertise in the space. So don't you ever for a minute think that I am here because I know so much and you don't know. Absolutely not. I was in a room and I tell you, I was just listening to people sharing. I was listening. I was like, wow. I wish we had a 2-hour workshop so we could go into 2 and 3 more breakout rooms. Because when I do workshops, I have at least 4 breakout rooms so we can talk, because you need to learn from each other. So here comes how we're going to wrap up this conversation. Before we get into the teacher disposition, I just want to leave you with this. It's a little reminder by Dr. Ann Lopez. And by the way, I know I'm late in saying this, but I'm sure you know every one of you have permission to take a picture of my slide, take a picture of me, and post on your social media and tweet. You do have I think you already know that, but just in case everybody was wondering, could I tweet this? Could I tweet a picture of Dr. Campbell? Could I tweet this slide because I am living for this slide? Yes, you absolutely can. But I want to take, so now you know that, not too late. I want to bring in Dr. Ann Lopez, a professor I admire and respect. And when she said this, I was like, why am I going to quote it when I can just make sure everybody know that she came from her? Because I love it. She said, implementing and embedding culturally responsive, appropriate, sustaining, anti-racist, anti-oppressive, decolonizing education takes planning and practice. We are not here to trick you, to say to you that everything we're talking about this evening is going to happen in 5 minutes. And you're going to walk away being this amazing teacher because everything, you went to a workshop with Dr. ABC, you have a conversation with Dr. ABC, we talk for 1 hour, and now you walk away, you're an expert at CRRP. No, you're not. I'm not even an expert. We are continue growing. When I do anti-Black racism workshop or anti-racism workshop, and I say to people, I know you're going to get a certificate, but you are not certified anti-racist. The certificate is that you attended a conversation, not that you are certified anti-racist. Because I can't certify you. You have to certify yourself. thinking about where you are in this journey of becoming anti-racist. I am not racist. We're past that. Telling people I am not racist, that's old school. What you need to say is, I am anti-racist. I am a true advocate and an ally. So that's where we're at. So let's wrap this conversation up, because I know you got to go have your dinner and drive home and have your snack and all that good stuff. And I want to make sure you do that on time. So what I want to wrap this up. We have talked about culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. We have talked about the fact that this takes work and effort and time and action and intentionality. We have talked about the areas in which culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy must be seen in the school culture and the climate, the things on the wall, the library, the books you use. I have to tell one more story, please. I have to tell one more story. I was at a workshop, Jane, and a teacher, when I challenged them to go back to their school. And when they come back to me next 2 weeks' time, I said, I want everybody to report to me what action you have taken. When we went back in the workshop the next time, one teacher, she couldn't wait, she raised and said, Dr. Campbell, I want to go first. And I could see it in her eyes that she was emotional. I could see it in her eyes. And she said to me, I'm the librarian at my school. And she said, I did what you said. I started an audit of the books in my library. She said, I realized that all the indigenous creation storybooks were listed on the fairy tales. The tears started to run down. I could see she's fighting it. She said, Dr. Campbell, I've been in that library for a while, and it dawned on me that all these indigenous storybooks were listed as fairy tales. She said, they are not fairy tales. And then she said, I took them all off the shelf and I create a separate shelf. And then she said, Dr. Campbell, just as you said, the next realization came to me. I only had a handful of indigenous books. And the handful that I had, she said, some of them weren't even written by indigenous people. She said, my action for the rest of this school year will be to create a shelf. I'm going to make sure when I leave the school year, I have an indigenous bookshelf that looks like an indigenous bookshelf, and the authors and the writers are telling their own story. By that time, she had me crying. Intentional, measured action. So when we come to these workshops and I ask and I charge you to act, and you say to me, well, I'm going to try to be more inclusive. I don't know what that means. That's not a smart objective, Christine. I don't know what that means. What does that mean? Are you going to work with the books? Are you going to look at just the way you celebrate? One workshop I did the other day, they said they're going to look at all the bulletin boards in the school, because they realize they have so many bulletin boards that have not been used, and they have not celebrated so many of their student population. They are going to be intentional about that. Many people are doing different things. Many people are examining who comes in the school, who get access, how often parents are pulled in the room and in the schools, other than a complaint time. So now we have done that. We're going to wrap this up with ourselves. Everybody get ready? 5 minutes to go. Let's focus on ourselves, Christine. Let's focus on ourselves, Sharon. So the culturally relevant, responsive educator, we have a desire to make a difference. We are agents of social change. We are passionate about a desire to make a difference. I want you to watch my pictures and notice the intentionality in every single picture. It's not a new thing. I'm just bringing your eyes to it, but I know many of you already picked that up, but I like to bring your eyes to it. Commitment to removing the barriers. A child comes to school 5 minutes late every day because she drops her two brothers to the school down the street. Why is she late? Why is there so many L beside her name? I hear you, Dr. Campbell, she's late. I understand. But do we need to put 65 late on our report card when we know of a fact she's dropping her brothers next door? Is that what we do? So when I took over, she's no longer late, Christine, because we have adjusted our arrival time. You see where I'm going with this, Christine? So we want to be intentional about removing the barriers. The next one we want to do as culturally relevant, we want to hold high expectation of all our students. We want to have those high expectations, challenge them, ask them those critical questions, broaden their knowledge, differentiation, scaffolding, accommodation. Let's do it. And when we have the high expectation, let's make sure we support the high expectations. That's something that I talk about a lot. There's an entire workshop I do, holding high expectation. I talk about how do we hold the high expectation, expect the high expectation, but how do we support the high expectations? We have a social cultural consciousness. We the teachers, we have a level of consciousness, how we treat difference among us. We don't come to school and perform and be a part of the equity group. But when we're at our homes and we're in our fabulous neighborhood and we look through the door, I'm looking through my window right now, Christine. I look through my window, Christine, and I see that a new family moved in and they're all Black people. And I'm wondering, well, oh, a Black families in our neighborhood. I wonder how they get to own a house like that. I wonder if they're renting. We have a social cultural consciousness where we are authentic, we are honest, we are inclusive, not on paper, because a lot of people are inclusive on paper. I have seen tons of equity framework. I am like, the best ones are out there. Just Google. Don't try to do any new one. Just Google. Google and borrow. You don't need to create any new thing. There are a bunch of things out there. The problem is we're not acting on them. We're constructivists. We allow students to live and we bring them experience to school. They don't come to school empty. They're capable. We know that. They come from homes where they have poems too. You could ask them about sharing their poems when in your poetry unit. I was at a school that I loved where the principal played the Canadian national anthem every single day in almost a different language and a different rhythm. The first time I heard the Canadian anthem in reggae, I almost died. Before that, I've never heard the Jamaican anthem in reggae. I heard the Canadian anthem in reggae. I was like, whoa. And my students asked me about it, and I was able to have a conversation with them about it, developing their cultural competence. There are many ways you can do it. I heard one particular teacher talk about the lack of the ESL students in her class. And I said to her one day, wouldn't it be lovely to knowing that you have ESL students who speak 2 and 3 other languages? Wouldn't it be lovely to have that particular child read the morning announcement in a certain language? Think about that. And as we wrap up, 2 more to go. We have a deep knowledge of their students. We're going to spend time to get to know our students. Deep knowledge of the community. You have to understand the community you're a part of. The community where your children come from. Understand the community. Their practices are culturally relevant. They're open and they're empowering. I love this picture. This is one of my favorite pictures. All the time I love this picture. It's empowering. It's empowering. It's dynamic. People are doing stuff. The teacher's smiling. She's allowing them to live their best student life. Teach from the heart. With emotional intelligence, our duty of care and empathy. Understanding that that's what we do. So with no seconds to go, thank you so much for engaging. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for allowing me in your space to have this conversation with you. 49 of us in the space having an amazing conversation. It's nothing but a privilege to do this kind of conversation with you all. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. Over back to you, Christine, to tell these beautiful people, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Dr. Campbell. On behalf of Ergo and everyone else who was able to join us here today, we want to thank you for your insightful presentation and the opportunities to converse on the very important topic of culturally responsive and relevant pedagogy, and for motivating us to open ourselves up to be better at what we do. I'm sure that we all leave here today with a better understanding of how to be more aware of our teaching and our space, and how we can better encourage our students to be, to belong, and to become. Thank you for engaging us and growing our cultural competence.
Bye, everyone. A pleasure. Have a wonderful afternoon. Enjoy it. Take some time for yourself. Make sure you breathe, relax, have a cup of tea, have a cup of juice, have a cup of something. All right? Make sure you do that. You need that. Thank you so much.